Hey, you. Do you want to solve all of your problems with tabletop role-playing games? It's super easy. It's called Session Zero. Let's find out.
Hey everybody, we wanted to let you know about our Encore Kingdom of the Gods giveaway. Like, subscribe, and comment on our videos for an opportunity to win a copy of the core rulebook as well as a customizable DM screen. We'll be letting you know who the winner is on Halloween.
Hey guys, I'm Brian.
And I'm Ryan.
And I'm Scott.
And I'm Bree.
And welcome to SRD. And today we're going to talk about Session Zero. So we've discussed this a couple times, throughout various videos, but we've never really delved into what Session Zero is. So who's got a good explanation of what Session Zero is?
I mean, Session Zero is kind of where you work out you lay the groundwork for your game. You put the ground rules out. Some people choose to do Session Zero before certain things are determined. Like, it's hard to gauge your players if you haven't talked to them already. So you want to kind of engage them before Session Zero so that then you can use Session Zero as really, introducing their characters, understanding how the game is going to work with their characters, and like I said, just kind of laying those ground rules out.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I do Session Zero, I've always kind of, pre-talked to all my players. It's a great time to get some feelers out. What are they thinking? What are they wanting to play? What kind of a game they're looking into? What type of world? Do they have any interest, or are they brand new players to it and are completely, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed open to the whole concept?
Session Zero for me is a time when we can hash out what's good and what's not good.
So Session Zero is all these things, and it's different for everyone and every person, every GM, every table. But essentially, it's become this formalized thing that we used to do a long time ago. And I think we've talked about this before, where at the end of old sessions, we used to sit down and talk about what we're going to do the next game. We'd love to play this kind of game, and we'd love to do this and play that, horror themes, etc. But now, over the last few years, it's become this formalized thing I think a lot of people have accepted, to where it's this session where you sit down and you don't play, but you hash out your concepts for the game as a GM. You present it to the table, kind of let them decide and play with it a little bit. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about it is bringing forth here's my idea. I want to run a 1890s Gaslight Cthulhu game, which is what we're playing personally on the weekends now. What do you guys think about it, and what would you like to see in that kind of game?
Well, I think the other thing that was important about specifically that Session Zero was knowing who had played before. And we were also moving into a new edition also.
Yes.
And so not only knowing who's played the system before, but who's specifically had experience with that edition. Because your player's skill level and knowledge of the system really depends on, will depend on what you do from there, and how quickly you need to move, how slowly you need to move, and kind of introducing them to the game when they don't really have a concept of how to play it. And it's a good time to discuss, what are your questions about these mechanics? And so you can cover them so you're not fumbling through them in your first session.
Right. We had a couple players that were completely brand new to Call of Cthulhu. And so they were asking what the specific stats mean and those kinds of stuff. And so, we only got one or two books, not enough to go around for folks. And so, being able to explain to them and talk to them about, specifically what those things mean, how they interact with each other. Those are important things that you cover in Session Zero. How to play the game is a big one, along with character creation.
As a player, you can also bring up certain things that you want to maybe look into. Mm-hmm. Maybe you had an idea for a custom class or a custom race, or bring those ideas up to your DM, then run them through everybody, make sure everybody's okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it also even allows, as a whole group, as a table, more ideas to come up, not just, you and your GM, or, you as the GM to your player, but the group as a whole. Someone else may come up with an idea that you're trying to kind of figure out, and kind of helps add to the variety for that as well.
SOD is proud to announce our brand new sponsor, Scabard RPG Campaign Manager, and it's exactly that. You can go there and keep track of all of your NPCs, your items, your maps, all of these things that you and your players can both access. If that's something that you need to do to kind of keep things in order, I know I do. I've been using it for years. You can find it down in the link below. If you decide that you like the premium features that are there, if you use our link within the first 3 hours, you get a 20% discount. So yeah, one of the really important things about, coming together and doing that session 0 is putting your backgrounds together. So you can talk about, this person worked at a tavern and this person worked at a dock, and how do they know each other? Why do they know each other? Well, maybe the tavern worker used to work with the dock worker, and so now they're buddies, and they're doing this thing, so they work together. Or in the case of fantasy adventure, maybe they were in a war together, or in a conflict together, or maybe they just grew up together. Being able to tie those pieces together at session 0 before your first session kind of gives that little bit of realism and honestly that buy-in with your players, so that they're all working together for a common goal of some kind.
One of the things you can do is you ask them 3 things. You ask them who they are, then you ask them 3 people they know, 3 locations they know. And this kind of gives you a lot more material to start pulling from when you're building your campaign story.
Well, and I think that's important because you could spend tons of time creating a world and have it all completely prepared before session 0. This is what's happening. And then you get to session 0 and you find that your players' characters don't fit in that world. They have no ties there. And then you've kind of written yourself into a corner where now I really need to figure out how to get my players involved in this world. Otherwise, there won't be buy-in. So, like you were saying, when you take the time to ask those questions beforehand, then you can build that into your campaign, as opposed to having something completely written beforehand and trying to work backwards and work your characters back in.
Right. There's nothing worth as a player than creating, especially in the older editions, creating a very specific character that was really good at something. One that brings to mind is one that was really great at mind control and charming and those kinds of things. And then being in like an undead campaign where that's not completely ineffective, but because we didn't talk about it beforehand. We didn't know what was going on, or vice versa, being something that's really about controlling undead, being a cleric that's all about it, and then there being not a single undead in the campaign.
Yeah, it makes it a lot nicer when you think back to when you do campaigns before having a session 0 or anything close to it. It was a lot more work on the GM trying to figure out backstories and interweaving. You would have those one-on-one moments of, hey, what are you thinking? Here's what it's going to be about. But also then trying to interweave the different characters. Because in a group without a session 0, you'd have 2 or 3 of them kind of get together and like, hey, let's plan something out together. But having that session 0, having everybody all together at one time, that's essentially all ironed out and taken care of. So it's a lot of less load taken off the GM, and for the players is all right there before you start.
And in fantasy games, it allows you to balance that party a little bit better. So you don't have 4 rogues, which is a fun party. Don't let me take that away. But you have a good balance of hey, we at least have a healer and we have like a tank and those kinds of things. So
and now it's immensely satisfying to me as a player when a personal goal that I have as a character or some inkling from my story, shows up in the campaign, and you're like, yes, I am involved in this. This is my moment. Where you really get to interject yourself as a character and own that. And if you're one of those people who maybe kind of falls in line in the party, you just, okay, well, we're going left now. That's your time to, own the moment. Just be in it and own it.
I 100% agree. And that's the thing for GMs, right? So, if you're going to do session 0s and you're going to ask people for backgrounds, use their backgrounds. Don't ask them for a background and you get a player that gives you, whether it's a paragraph or 20 pages, don't ask for a background and then never use it. That is the worst. That is probably one of the worst things. Like I've got my own story inside of my head. You're going to make me put it down on paper and then you're not going to use it. That's really unfortunate. And I don't think anyone really expects, a whole diatribe or 20 chapters on their background. But a nudge, there's nothing more exciting, I think, to a player than finding that message in a bottle that has like a long lost letter from their long lost uncle that was lost to sea or something like that, and it may go nowhere else other than this letter, but they will hold on to it and they'll look for it, right? Like they'll try to do anything they can to follow up on that in some way, and I think that people find that really exciting.
Another thing to bring up is what is not acceptable at the table.
Yes.
This is a good time to lay your firm rules at the table. What topics are going to be on or off the table. what things are good, and that's also as a player to go around and talk about what issues you have.
Yeah.
We know each other quite well, but we don't know everything about each individual person. So especially if you're trying to bring up a topic that's a little more mature, definitely bring that up to make sure that everybody in the group's okay with it.
Yeah. Especially if you're doing a story game. You're never going to get a session 0 at a convention, but story games you will. And so don't skip that in a store. You don't know those people, and they don't know you, and that's a really good time to kind of explain how you GM. Hey, I'm really a person that likes to plan things out, or that likes to stick to the story, especially if you're running a module. Please swallow the pill and play with the module, or be free to do what you want, because that's what I like. I like to improv. I like to do these things. Or, hey, we may talk about some mature things. Is that okay with you? At home, it's a little different. Don't invite strangers into your home. We've talked about this before.
I think another great thing about Session 0 is watching the players develop their character with one another, where you see them trying things out, like, does this work for my character? And Brian, it's not picking on you, but it's something that was fun to watch, was you trying to figure out which accent that you were going to use for your character in our Cthulhu game. It was fun to watch, number one. And number two, it encouraged accents from our character who's playing someone from Louisiana to try on that Creole accent. I'm working with a English woman who was born and raised in Germany, or born and raised in Russia, but now is in Germany. So trying to find an English, German, Russian accent that isn't awful to the ear. It's fun to work those things out as a group. And when you have an enthusiastic, even if it's one enthusiastic person at Session 0, that can be contagious for the group, and they can be like, man, this campaign's really going to be something fun and something interesting because this person's excited. Now I can get excited. I have a right to be excited about it, as opposed to someone who's gotten excited preparing by themselves at home. I wrote my character out. Okay, I'm ready. I've got this ready. And they show up to Session 1 and everyone's kind of, I don't know if this is appropriate for me to just come out here with my accent. And so they are reserved in trying that. I think it's great when you can come together and decide, yep, we're doing this, we're going in full gusto.
I think it's important to talk real quick about the fact that, the concept that you bring to the table may not always go over well. Sometimes you will bring a concept to the table as the GM that the players are just not into. You may say, hey, I really want to play this, high-paced fantasy game within, a sci-fi world, and your players just aren't into it, especially if it's a group of players that you're used to playing with, and maybe they want to play something completely different, and that's okay. Maybe you can try to work the story that you had, the main plot points, into a different world or a different setting or a different concept, or you may just have to scrap it all together, and that's fine. Session 0 is a perfect time to say, okay, well, if you guys understood what I have, what thoughts did you have? What would you like to do? And a whiteboard is great for those kinds of things. Just put it up there and work it out. What do the players want to do? It's very important that it is a group game. The GM and the players share equal importance. You're just driving the bus as the GM. So you want to make sure that you have passengers to drive the bus. Before we go, a lot like Bree mentioned, that Session 0, on top of the goals and Ryan, and top of the goals and things that you get from the players, that's just work that you don't have to do anymore. You can have them honestly build the world with you. Between the, where are you from? Well, tell me what it's like where you're from. Who are the people you know? What are they like? What do they do? If you say that, I'm friends with, this shopkeeper back home, well, what's her name and what does she do? Oh, well, her name is Elaine and she has a potion shop. Sweet. Now I have a potion shop in my world and, an NPC. Well, what else did she do? And you can kind of pull those things from it. Some of the funner things that I've pulled from other systems is allowing true false statements from other players. So you write in a bucket, just a card, give me a true statement about Ryan and a false statement about Ryan. And it could be Ryan is short, and a false statement could be he's a wizard. And so whatever that may be, and so it's just a fun thing, rumors about him that you can play with in your world. You can also write flaws and boons for each other. That's what we did in our Call of Cthulhu game. It seemed to work out pretty well. And we put them all in a hat, and then we drew them out so they all had random flaws and traits that went along with their characters. They just kind of had to suck it up and go with it. And so far, I think most people have enjoyed it. Yeah?
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it? You weren't there. Damn night shift. Well, hey guys, if you like these kind of videos, please comment and like down in the description below. As always, we love for your subscriptions. Give us a comment. This is a little bit of a new format for us. It's kind of like a round, straight table-ish thing. If you like this kind of thing, let us know, and we'll try to have more of an effort to wrangle some folks in here. As always, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.